You know what they need to name every type of media after?
Oranges.
Or fruits.
That'd be nice.
Either
Apples.
way.
Bananas.
Welcome to our show, Banana.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes, that's a vegetable.
It's a fruit. Pineapple.
Berry.
Cherries.
Lemons.
Yeah.
All the fruits.
Yep.
Which, coincidentally,
We're not talking about fruits at all today.
We're not. Nope. Zero fruits. Just franchises that are named after them.
Just one.
A singular.
Singular.
That's what we're here to talk about here today on this episode, which is number 85 of the Season Anime Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about anime, manga, video games, those sorts of things. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by Doc Owl and Ladium.
Hello.
And we're here to talk to you about an anime from 2016 and a manga that was a little bit earlier, started in 2012. It's called Orange.
And after last week's hilarity, we're gonna make it sad again.
Rein it back in. Time to get serious and sad.
Because last week was crazy.
It was
awesome.
So yeah, this was I guess I don't know, but like to me it was relatively big when it came out. I mean, I was very much looking forward to it as someone who had read the manga previously and then getting hyped for the anime. You obviously coming to this a little bit later after the fact.
As I do.
Mm-hmm. Also, we should make mention before we start this show that there's going to be a lot of talk about suicide in this, so if that is something that bothers you or gets you upset, makes you feel unpleasant, that is a fair warning.
See you next week.
Yeah. As that will be pretty much rampant throughout this entire episode, as it is a big theme throughout the series.
Correct. So we do not judge you at all if you don't listen to this episode. That is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we'll see you next week. But for those of you who are still with us, you get to hear about suicide a lot. Whoops.
Yeah. I wanted to start this off interestingly because this is a show that I have talked about in the past on the other Season Anime Checkup podcast. And just to hear what I had to say, 2 years ago. So let's see if this works. I'm playing this from my phone because I'm too lazy to just splice in the audio into this. All right. It was probably one of my most anticipated shows of this season, oddly enough. That's big hype. As someone who read the manga previously, I was real excited to get sad by the anime adaptation of Orange. Which that still totally happens, as the show is a faithful adaptation story-wise, and makes you very sad at times. Elsewhere, the show is rife with weird and wonky animation. It's sad that it hinders the show in such a way where you're watching, oh man, this is real sad, but oof, those characters look real bad. It really is a bummer that the animation issues drag down the story, because it is some good shoujo, if that is the sort of thing you were looking for. I don't know if the issue stemmed from time or just the way certain shots lined up and didn't help the animators, but it was constant throughout the entire season. There were a few episodes midway through that were especially rough to where I thought they had gotten the Ace Attorney budget. There is a spin-off manga and movie coming out in the future, but I sure hope they take their time with the movie so it doesn't end up looking exactly like the show. Orange deserved better than to have to deal with one of the most constant problems in 2016 anime, maybe of the past couple years, and animation problems. There you go. So yeah, one of the key complaints coming out of the anime in 2016, as you heard from 2 years ago me, that ripe, wide-eyed 26-year-old Jared, this show was rife with some animation issues.
Yep.
And you specifically see it very much like midway through the show, or just there are shots of the series that are just incredibly rough in a way that you're just like, man, they must have not had a lot of time to put some of these scenes up, or just like were running out of time, or just budget, or whatever it was. It's bad. Like, I haven't seen if the home video release of this like fixes any of those problems or not. I haven't heard one way or the other. I haven't seen one way or the other, but it definitely was a big enough issue that when this show was airing via simulcast in 2016, that it was pretty much the dominant focal point of the conversation when talking about this show.
I watched the dub version, so I don't know if that had been cleaned up or not.
No, that would be the same.
Okay. But yeah, there were definitely some animation errors and weird wonkiness throughout. I will fully admit to that.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say that I really like the style of the characters in this.
Yeah.
Like how they're actually drawn is really, really pretty. It's just that every once in a while they like fall off and become basically stick figures.
So yeah, like I still think it did deserve a little bit better than this. Like this story in general, like from the manga, is very good. Like the manga is very well detailed throughout, and it's something that I think could have or probably should have deserved a little bit better than what it got. But like I said, I don't know if the Blu-ray releases like fixed a lot of the problems or not. I would hope so.
I would assume so.
And I don't remember, like, because you watched the movie, and I don't remember if the movie also had these issues or as well or not.
I didn't really see them.
Okay, so at least they at least like probably had a little bit more time to put some more detail, I guess, or be able to kind of like smooth over some of those animation problems that they were having throughout the anime series in the film. So that is a good thing, at least. But
and I mean, some scenes are literally just like copy paste, though.
Right.
So there is that.
Yeah. So I guess like you obviously you just watched this.
I did.
What was it that made you want to see this show?
So I was reading the description. I have Verve. Verve. And so it kept popping up in my recommended list, which I wonder what the Verve description is, just out of curiosity. Like, why was I so entranced by it?
Let's find out.
All right. So, second year, Naho receives a letter from her future self that warns of a tragedy befall a shy boy she will come to know. Can Naho and a group of friends change the future, or must they live with the regret that can never be erased? For one, sounds like some quality shoujo right there. Two, shy boys, yes, please. And time travel shenanigans, like I'm all about that. So when I saw this, and I thought the art style was really interesting. When I saw the like screenshot of it, and I'm like, all right, I'm into it. And then we had a conversation the other day of like, what anime should I watch? Because I have a very hard time sitting down and watching anime.
Yeah. Until you just like marathon through them.
Yeah, I watched this in less than a day. It was ridiculous. But yeah, it was that brought me in. And I figured out like the twist pretty early, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a story that hooks you pretty well. Like, when I was reading the manga before the anime came out, like every time there was a new chapter, I was like fumbling through my phone just to get to read it, because like I was like, all right, yeah, let's get to this, because it was so enticing and very good. And the anime does capture that pretty well, I think, as well as it can through the 13 episodes it has. Which also, like, one of the key things that helps this series is that the manga is relatively short. So that allows there to like not be a lot of like parts that are cut out or glossed over, or just, you know, entire sections that are just not in the anime because they're not going to have enough time, or they're not going to have a next season or something like that. It's just like, you know, you're getting pretty much the entirety of what was in the manga adapted into this anime series, because you know, there's not a lot of the manga to begin with, so they're able to do all that.
And I like those kind of series where it's just like wrapped up. You get what you need, and then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are ideal for me because I can get in and I can get out, and then I don't have to like really be stuck on it forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, and like you're not getting from the ending. We're like, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen next. But too bad they're never gonna get a second season.
Looking at you, Yona.
Yeah, specifically, that's definitely one of them. So yeah, we could. I guess we'll probably just go episode by episode, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many episodes, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to go through the story.
You've watched this a little bit more recently than I did, so
Yes.
you'll be able to talk more
Yep.
about some of these episodes. But Wikipedia has some good, like, at least detailed episode description, so we'll just probably just go off that.
Okay.
If that's fine. Let's talk about episode number 1. It's called Letter 01. Because all these
I wonder what will happen.
episodes are letters.
Yeah, it's all her letters that she's reading and going by. So letter 1 is the first one.
It is the first episode. Debuted on July 4th.
Yay.
A short intro where 26-year-old Naho Takabiya and her friends converge a lot and intend to read letters kept inside a buried time capsule that they wrote when they were 16 years old. Naho begins her story about the moments that she regrets in her life and decides to tell her 16-year-old counterpart how to deal with her misfortunes. 10 years earlier, Naho wakes up late and receives a letter which comes from her adult self. She reads the first page of the letter at school, which accurately tells that she was late that day. It also says that a transfer student will sit next to her, and it happens. Kakeru Narase introduces himself and sits next to Naho. As the class dismisses early, Naho and her friends decide to take a stroll, get acquainted, and make friends with Kakeru. At night, Naho reads the letters again and notices the similarity between her writing and contents of her diary and the letter. The following day, Naho notices Kakeru's absence. In PE class, she reads the letter saying that she regrets not joining in the softball game. A returning Kakeru chats with Naho regarding joining a sports club and her injured foot due to the size of her shoe. At the softball game, Naho's teammates invite her to play, and she is hesitant at first. But because of the letter and a little inspiration from Kakeru, she stands up and plays as the batter in the softball game. Naho hits a home run, winning the game. The class also emerges as champions because Suo wins the boys' football game, or soccer game. Naho now completely believes the contents of the letter are real and will happen, and as she reads the next page, it reveals that Kakeru will die. The letter asks Naho for a favor that she must watch closely over Kakeru.
So, and she also mentions in the letter that, like, that's the day that she, the softball game is the day that she fell in love with Kakeru.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's pretty important.
Yes.
Because she's like, wait, what? I think that this episode does a really good job of introducing everybody because they have that entire scene. Well, you know, they have the future people, but they have the scene where they're all walking home from school together.
And they have to introduce themselves. Yeah,
you get a really good idea of their dynamics at that point. Mm-hmm. Because you see that the glasses, what's his name?
Let's take
Hagita. Yeah. And Azusa, they've got like this playful antagonistic dynamic, which is based on a crush. Mm-hmm. Which you don't really. Okay, I was gonna say you don't really know that it's a crush. You know it's a crush. You know that there is a crush there, but they don't acknowledge that it's a crush. They just kind of tease each other constantly. It's one of those relationships. And then everybody teases Suwa because he's so tall. All the time they tease him, which, I mean, makes sense. And we also see some interaction with Kakeru and Naho because she's not willing to speak up about like what kind of bread that she's interested in, and Kakeru senses that and notices it, and he's like, I'll trade you this kind of bread. And so you can see that he's intuitive about like what she's feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think that becomes important, especially considering this is the first day he met her and he can already tell like, hey, you know, you're not being honest here.
Right.
You want this bread, don't you? I'll give it to you.
Like he even mentions like later on in the during like the sports thing where like she talks about like, you know, the shoe thing, and he's like, hey, you need to go tell someone about this. Like I noticed that like you're very apprehensive about things, like because I've been watching you, and she
Hmm.
also like does the same thing. Where like she's like, hey, you should go join the soccer club. I've been watching you too.
Yeah. Because she gets too small shoes, and she's like, no, it's too late to tell anybody. And he's like, no, no, you need to go tell somebody. This is not good for your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he like she gets a blister at one point, and he doctors up her blister. I was like, oh, that's really sweet. But yeah, then you know, after the first day, he goes missing for 2 weeks, and um, he comes back, and everybody's like, so what were you doing? Playing video games? He's like, yeah, something like that. And one thing that I noticed in this episode that I noticed throughout the entirety of the series is that Kakeru has this like adorable smile that you can tell he's faking.
Mm-hmm.
And he does it every time that he is lying to them about something. I've noticed that now. Um, it's the cutest smile in the world, but he's clearly faking it. But also just telling me straight up, like, he's gonna die. I was like, all right, I need to know what's going on here.
And like you said, like this episode does a lot of good like introductory things where it does the characters, it introduces the big twist, and also introduces like the time travel mechanic,
Hmm.
or I guess like the timeline mechanic. I don't know. It's not time travel's weird.
Yeah, there's more of an explanation for it in the movie, and we'll get into that in a
Yeah,
bit. But I can tell you how they do it.
but it introduces a lot of like the key pillars of the show,
Yeah,
as you would want from a a series to
introductory
do.
episode.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the second episode then.
All right.
Letter 2. Naho continues reading the letter, learning that Kakeru will die soon. As she progresses through the letter, she learns that Kakeru doesn't bring any lunch to school and that her future self regrets never making lunch for him. The letter tells her to make lunch for Kakeru and she does so. However, the next day, Naho hesitates giving Kakeru the lunch she prepared. After school, Kakeru notices Naho's bag, which contains the bento meant for him. However, Naho rudely dismisses Kakeru, but later apologizes. Kakeru decides to accompany and take a stroll in the park with Naho, during which he explains his 2-week-long absence to her. He reveals that his mother had committed suicide on the first day of class, and Naho realizes that was the day she and her friends asked him to hang out with them instead of going home. To comfort Kakeru, Naho finally gives him the bento she made, and Kakeru smiles. Afterwards, Naho decides that she will protect Kakeru and make sure that he is happy. In the present timeline, Naho and Suwa, now married with a son, meet up with their other friends to go to Kakeru's burial place. Which is interesting
Hmm.
because I guess if we're going off what the anime does, like they show that final part in the first chapter. Like that's the end point of the first chapter.
Yeah.
Is you see Suo with a kid and obviously Naho's with him, and they're going to see Kakeru. But yeah, this is once again we're getting some more big twists from the future side, and obviously Kakeru revealing some big secrets of his own, which I don't know if we've figured out yet. That like
What happens to him?
no like that the letters were made mention that like she should definitely not like make him go with them.
Yeah, she does read that.
Okay.
She reads it in the first episode, and it says like, don't invite him seriously, and she's like,
Whatever.
I don't understand why that would happen. Like, and I'm gonna invite him because he's a new kid, and that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so at this point, she's like, oh God, I should have listened to the letter.
Yeah.
Um, but it also explains like that's why he hasn't had lunch, and the guys have been teasing him like, oh, does your mom not make you lunch? And he's like, no, she doesn't, so I'm gonna go buy the bread. And um it's really tragic.
Yeah.
It's really, really tragic. But Naho spends a lot of time trying to make him a bento, and then promises from then on that she's going to continue to make it for him after he eats it and is like absolutely in love with it. And I mean, I'm sure it did him a lot of good to have somebody put that much time into something for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's starts hurting a lot.
And you can definitely tell like why like the future version of her would be like real upset that she never did this, because
Yeah.
obviously of what happens, like it makes such a big impact on him.
Also finding out that her and Sua like get married and have a kid. I was not expecting that, and then here it is.
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay. Well, guess they went to the bone zone.
And obviously, they'll dive into that dynamic a little bit later
Oh
as the
yeah.
show goes on as well. Letter 03. Naho progresses through her letter, or to her letter, to her, I don't know.
Through her
I
letters.
guess, yeah. Telling that Kakeru will soon leave the soccer club. However, Suwa announces that Kakeru will be staying in the soccer club for good. Naho realizes that every moment mentioned in the letter will soon change for the future. She reads again the letter. This time, it is about a girl named Ueda Ryo, who is interested in Kakeru. The letter tells that Ueda will confess her feelings to Kakeru, and later they will start dating. As the class ends early, Naho and friends play rock, paper, scissors to determine who will buy drinks, and it happened, Kakeru loses. As Kakeru buys their drinks, Ueda approaches him. Naho questions Kakeru if he likes Ueda, and Kakeru admits that he likes Ueda. Again, Ueda approaches Kakeru, and after a brief talk, Ueda leaves smiling. Naho looks again to the letter that she should check the case of her eraser borrowed by Kakeru and look for the enclosed note, asking Naho if he should date Ueda. Naho replies to Kakeru's note and leaves it to his locker, but it is too late when she learns that Kakeru and Ueda are now officially dating. Emotionally devastated, Naho left her friends and goes home, drinks the orange juice given by Kakeru, and apologizes to her future self, seemingly regretting due to her lack of initiative. Shifting to the present timeline where they converge on a lot, reading their letters from their younger selves until they focus on Kakeru's letter. In his letter, Kakeru praises everyone except himself because he never wrote anything about himself. They deduce that Kakeru committed suicide and started crying. Naho resolved that she will do anything to protect her friends and the future.
Which I had figured out that he had committed suicide like before it had been brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no. Oh no, 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 no.
Was it just like signs within him that you kind of figured that out, or just like way the story was kind of going, you figured like, oh, this is probably the way it's going to go, considering, he's dead in the future and something has to have happened?
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit dark and I apologize for that, but most people that know me know that I have like real issues with depression, like extreme issues with depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I'm watching media and I see a character that has it, I can usually pick up these kinds of signs.
Right.
Because I've experienced them myself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one thing that's really difficult to do is to actually write somebody who does suffer from that unless you have it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the author does or not, but did a fantastic job. So it's picking up on some of the cues of things that he did. And I guess it was 2014. I had a mental breakdown to the point that they considered me a suicide risk. And so like I get those cues from him. I see what he's doing and I see what he's saying and I'm like, "Oh, okay. I get what is happening here. I understand." And so like I picked it up before they actually revealed it because I was paying attention to what his character was doing after they said the first episode that he died. Because I was seeing that he was faking stuff. I was seeing that he was going through the motions in a lot of it. And then like when you get to the point of here, I'm like, yeah, okay, I know what happened to you. I get it. Like I said, a little dark, sorry about that, but it actually felt really, really real to me. And I think that's part of why I've continued to watch it is I wanted this boy to have hope.
But also it's interesting the way you mentioned that it's hard to write like that stuff without experiencing it. Mm-hmm. And considering how much you're like, yeah, this is right on cue, this is right on cue, this is right on cue, like that really adds just an element of like that type of realism that this is a very accurate portrayal of depression, and it really makes it an interesting like idea of like, okay, well, does the author also suffer from this as well, or did they know someone who they're able to like talk to about this and formulate stuff from that, or what? It's real interesting.
Right. And I mean, that's something that you and I have dealt with personally, is that you've written pieces for Crunchy where you've had to talk about like mental health, and you come to me and say like, do I accurately represent this?
Right.
And I appreciate that as somebody who does suffer from it, that or deals with it, however you want to phrase it, because people don't like the word suffer. But I appreciate that somebody is actually taking the time to make sure it's right.
Yeah, exactly. Like I guess I don't necessarily know. I've never gone to like a psychiatrist or been diagnosed with anything. I probably have anxiety and stuff like that, but
You have anxiety.
yeah, okay. Most likely, I've never been diagnosed with any of that stuff, but you know, whenever I talk about that stuff, I want to make sure like that I'm right. I'm not just talking out of my ass when I'm talking about it, like because there are people have experienced differences in those illnesses, obviously, and to have someone who may not necessarily have that type of illness and is writing about it and just to like talk about it at a whim and not really understand it, like that's real bad. And obviously, as a writer, you want to be able to give like representation to people and have their voices be heard, or at least have them like have their problems or whatever you're talking about, like let it be understandable to people who also are not necessarily may not understand it as well or don't suffer from it or whatever. So like yeah, it's definitely like one of the things I super like obviously want to make sure I get, and like it's definitely something like you talked about, like where I've wrote about those sorts of things for Crunchyroll, and I've come to you and like, hey, is this the right terminology to use? Is this like if a character is suffering from this, what exactly is that? And I think that's very important for writers and just in general for people to do. If you're experiencing it, or someone experiencing it, like talk to someone and be like, hey, what exactly is happening when this person's doing this, and this.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is worth mentioning here is that the first time that I ever actually dealt with my depression, like when I went through a serious bout of it, I was like 13 or 14 years old. So I was around the same age as these kids.
Right.
So I understood how he was feeling in a lot of it. And again, it's just subtle cues. And depression doesn't look the same in every person. It just doesn't. But when you know those mindsets and those emotions, you can pick up on cues at least that that's what's happening. So I think that my personal experience is what made me figure it out before they actually mentioned it. Because you remember the text messages when I found out, I was like, oh God, no, he committed suicide, didn't he? And then later on, I was like, okay, yeah, they confirmed that he committed suicide. But like, I figured it out way before
very soon, yeah.
It. But again, one of the big things is that smile, because it's so fake. It's so fake, and it's so obviously fake, but nobody picks up that it's fake.
It's definitely like someone who has come to an understanding of how to go through the motions.
Well, and his mom committed suicide, which a lot of it is genetic. My grandma committed suicide, but she had bipolar. She didn't have depression, so that's a completely different thing. But it can run in families. That's a situation, and especially when somebody that you're extremely close to, and given that Kakeru only had his mom, that it's. I don't want to say like it's an example for him in a sense, but like he feels in a way that he's responsible for it. And he feels in a way that that's the only way he can see her again.
And also like just that like that age and that time frame of a person's life.
Oh, it's rough.
It's rough. And also I guess I would feel like that's mostly a time where like people would be going through like that sort of stuff, but also it would not be diagnosed, where they wouldn't know. So like it could like that specifically, like having that not be diagnosed, like that can lead to things going to a certain extreme.
Yeah, honestly, what should have happened here is once his mom did that, they should have gotten him into some kind of therapy and seeing if they could get him on medication, that kind of thing. And that's what that 2 weeks should have been spent
doing. Yeah, exactly.
But they didn't.
I mean, obviously, I don't know how mental health is like treated in Japan, like if that would have been like even an option or whatnot, but I would agree with you, like that should have been like immediately someone like, oh hey, he doesn't really have a support system anymore, like we need to help this kid because things could get real bad real quick here.
So it was upsetting to watch, but at the same time, like I was more into the series at this point because I realized like, okay, I relate to this kid. I understand what he's going through. I want to see how this plays out. I don't have a time traveler thing telling me like, hey, don't be a depressed sack of shit, you person.
I don't know if future you would be exactly saying it. Like, look, man, you're gonna be dealing with some. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fair.
Let's talk about episode number 4.
Okay.
All right. In the present timeline, Naho and her friends visit Kakeru's relative.
Oh, actually, let's go back to episode 3 for a second.
Let's hit the rewind button. All right.
Okay, I was also screaming like this entire freaking end of the episode for episode 3 because of the whole like eraser thing and him asking if he should date her. And as a girl, you better go. You better go.
Oh, right, yeah, you
better
were.
go tell him. You better go do it. And she puts the no in his shoe. I'm like, and he does the hand symbol at one point for like yes, which is important for later. But he didn't actually like Ueda,
Right.
and he had even asked Naho to like intervene, and she didn't do it. I'm like, oh my god, Naho. So you got to deal with my like screaming text messages of like rage at this point, and I get shyness, I really do, and it's hard to tell somebody that you like them, but oh man, I was so mad.
Yeah.
I was so mad. Now we can go to episode 4.
All right. In the present timeline, Naho and her friends visit Kakeru's relative. It reveals that before Kakeru committed suicide, the latter usually talked about Naho to his relative. Shifting back to the earlier timeline, Kakeru and Ueda started dating, and people knows how Ueda treats Kakeru, especially how Ueda clings to Kakeru while walking down the school premises. Naho, as she read a few parts of the letter, avoids Kakeru while the latter is seemingly initiates a conversation with her. Meanwhile, Takako and Azusa dislike Ueda and try to ask Naho if she's hiding anything. As Naho evades Kakeru and her friends' questions, Naho becomes emotional and Suo approach Naho. Suo tells Naho to talk to Kakeru. Learning that Ueda and Kakeru will have a quarrel, Naho realizes yet again that the future is constantly changing. At the hallway, Ueda and Kakeru had a brief argument, revealing Ueda's bad attitude and jealousy due to Kakeru's treatment with other girls, especially to Naho. Finally, Naho and Kakeru decide to talk to each other. Kakeru tells Naho that he will break up with Ueda, seemingly following Naho's opinion on dating Ueda. Kakeru also tells Naho that, in fact, he is in love with a special someone, and it will be a secret.
I wonder who it is.
It's I don't know. Who could it be?
Which, it talks a lot about the fight that they have about Ueda, and the way that it's actually portrayed is really interesting because what happens is that Ueda is trying to get to Kakeru and knocks over Naho.
Mm-hmm.
And Kakeru is like, whoa, no, not okay. And he like goes and tries to help Naho up, and Ueda gets mad at him. And so then Naho feels like directly responsible for it, and shenanigans ensue. But like at that point, even like Ueda was mad at him because of his like feelings for Naho, which are very obvious. But at the same time, like in this situation, he picks Naho over Ueda because like Ueda was she knocked her over and like didn't care. She's like, she doesn't matter. And he's like, whoa, no, sir. So this is a point where we actually see Kakeru being like really assertive and like saying, no, this is not okay. Which we haven't seen him be like super verbal about that before. Like we've seen him tell Naho like, hey, you should do this. You should be more assertive and that kind of thing. At this point, he's standing up and saying like, no, this is not going to happen like this. And so like he's actually demonstrating to her like what she should be doing in a sense.
Right.
It's interesting. Like they're playing off of each other. And it's so sad to watch Naho like running away from him because you can just see his face like fall apart every time it happens. I'm like
Also, I like how like Naho's friends are just like ride or die, like, yo, you want us to beat that girl up? We will beat that girl up.
My God, it was great. I love her friends. Like all of her friends are fantastic, and the fact that those the two girls in the friend group are just like, yeah, nah, this ain't happening. like it made me so happy because I've mentioned this in other episodes. Like anytime you have like positive girl friendships and relationships, I'm all about that life. And in this sense, you have these two girls who were like, you are being absolutely terrible to our friend for no reason that like she can help. And you need to get over it or we're going to do something about it.
Mm,
And you end up having Sua also step in at points, but these two girls are really, really instrumental
yeah.
in it. And it's awesome.
All right, let's move on to the 5th episode.
Okay.
Kakiro invites Naho to join him after school as he is free due to the suspension of club activities. Naho continues to realize that there are discrepancies between her world and the letter she received from the future, as her letter tells her that all 6 friends will go together, but it ends up just being her and Kakiro, as everyone else cites various reasons that they cannot join. While overlooking the city, Kakiro uses the opportunity to present Naho with a hairpin as he thanks her for the bentos she makes for him. He also invites her out during the weekend to the library to study. With Naho's help, Kakiro receives the highest score in the chemistry test. Their science teacher gives a short explanation on the concept of time travel and the theory of alternate parallel universes. Coincidentally enough,
We'll talk about that in a second.
Naho suddenly realizes that the letter hasn't changed despite her present changing, probably due to the fact that she has perhaps created a new timeline with the choices she has made. She is devastated to think that despite everything she has done, nothing will change her future self. As the world has changed, an event where Kakiro asks Naho to watch the fireworks alone together at the end of the school festival is never triggered. Naho then forces herself to ask Kakiro to watch the fireworks with her. Kakiro asks Suwa for permission to see the fireworks along with Naho, as he and the others are aware that Suwa actually likes Naho. Suwa, however, has made up his mind to support Kakiro and Naho instead. During the school festival, Naho is ambushed by Ueda and her lackeys, who bully her into showing the hairpin that Kakiro bought for her, but she is saved by Suwa, who shows up and takes her back to their friends at the pool. She later thanks Suwa for everything he has done for her, as her letter tells her to never take his kindness and friendship for granted. The letter reveals that in the future, Suwa was the one who saved her heart.
Isn't that a combination of 2 episodes?
I don't know. It's all for the 5th episode.
Huh, because I feel like a lot of that happened in the next episode. But the hairpin did happen and the studying did happen. And the studying part was really, really funny because when he gets the exam back, he has like a 97 or 98, something like that. Naho has like a 94. And then everybody else basically just freaking bombed it. Hagita had like a 26 on his. I was like, Jesus, dude. And like, I understand that science is hard. I get it. But, and I also texted you during this. I'm like, this is some Zero Escape stuff happening right now because it's like, here's this obscure scientific theory thing that you've never even heard of, but we're going to talk about it for about like 10 minutes and it's going to matter eventually. Promise. Pay attention.
Parallel worlds, alternate timelines. This is all very important.
Right, and has nothing to do with what they're doing in class.
Nope.
Nothing. And I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. But yeah, I do think that a lot of this was in episode 6 as well, because I remember that this was like them getting closer and then that she invites him to the fireworks. But I think that episode 6 has the actual like Ueda confrontation.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Anyway, we'll just talk about it.
Yeah.
So this is a instance where Ueda is bullying Naho because she's mad that Kakeru broke up with her and she realizes that Naho is the one that he actually has feelings for. And it's worth mentioning that one reason that Ueda has like latched onto him so much is because he's from Tokyo and she's from Tokyo, and so she like wants to make fun of all the like country people with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not really into that. But yeah, so she gets the hairpin and it's really pretty. And he asked her at one point, like, are you going to wear it? And so she plans to wear it to the fireworks so that he can see that she like appreciated it. And so she gets cornered at one point to see the hairpin.
Right.
And she also at one point is told to like go move boxes for a teacher. And I may be confusing these two, but anyway, she has to move the boxes for the teacher. I know for a fact because she's moving them, and she's afraid she's gonna miss the fireworks, and Kakeru thinks that he like got ditched. And the two best friend girls come up and they're like, "We got these boxes. You need to get to the pool. Go
This is the
now."
sixth episode.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the OVA confrontation then.
Well, I think there's
'Cause
two different ones.
the fireworks episode is 6.
Where she gets cornered about the hairpin, and then apparently in the 6th episode she gets cornered about carrying the cartons.
Okay, so the hairpin is in 5,
Yes.
and that's when Sua saves her.
Yes.
And he grabs her by the wrist and is like, "You're coming with me." Not like that, but he like
You're coming with me.
machos it up trying to get her saved.
Yeah, you coming with me? Take it.
Excuse me, what?
You know, you said he was macho, like the Macho Man.
Randy Savage.
Yes.
Okay, I get it now. Sua is now Macho Man Randy Savage, and any seriousness of this episode is now gone. Okay, so there's 2 different confrontations. I'm right.
Yeah.
But one of them is in episode 6. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah. Anyway, the hairpin thing is she realizes that Kakeru gave it to her, so she's trying to steal it from her, which is like a pretty common trope in Japanese media. I haven't figured that out yet. Like, if a gift is given, then like they want to steal the gift away. It happens in a lot of anime.
You are right. I don't know exactly why, but yeah, you're not wrong about that.
Because, like, I went to high school and none of that ever really happened.
Right.
People just, like, treated you like utter garbage if you liked somebody they liked. Trust me, I know.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of confrontations that we've kind of already talked about, let's talk about episode 6.
Yeah.
In the evening, Kakeru asks Naho to meet at the pool as he wants to talk with Sua, who persuades Kakeru to go and make Naho happy. However, Naho is once again cornered by Ueda and her lackeys and is bullied into carrying 2 heavy cartons to the upperclassmen's homeroom on the 3rd floor. Ueda then heads to the pool with the intention to watch the fireworks with Kakeru, but is stopped at the gate by Sua and Hagita, who inform her that Kakeru is looking for her elsewhere. The fireworks start and Naho is distraught until Azusa and Takako run into her and quickly take the cartons, telling Naho to hurry to Kakeru. By the time she arrives, the fireworks have stopped, but Kakeru notices that Naho is wearing the hairpin he gave her. While they talk, the fireworks suddenly start again, and they watch together while holding hands. Later, Naho reads ahead in her letter and discovers that Kakeru will die in an accident near his home on February 15th. In the future timeline, Sua asks Kakeru's grandmother if Kakeru's death was really an accident. She reveals the last note Kakeru wrote before he died, asking his grandmother to forgive him, and that he was going to see his mother to apologize. In the present, the 6 friends decide to meet at the Matsumoto Bon Festival a few days later, but Naho and Kakeru find themselves alone when the other 4 pretend to be late. While visiting a shrine, Kakeru lets slip that he asked God to pass on a message to his mother. As her letter tells her to try to get Kakeru to open up about his mother, Naho finally manages to force Kakeru to reveal that he believes his mother's death was his fault, that his refusal to go with her to the hospital on the day of the opening ceremony led her to commit suicide. Naho is unable to comfort him and is upset as she doesn't know what to do. She is visited by Sua the next day and decides that she can't save Kakeru on her own. As she tries to explain everything, Sua stops her to reveal that he too has received a letter from his future self.
Yeah! Oh man, so a lot happened in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I already talked about the box confrontation a bit, which it's pretty ride or die again with Sua and Hagita to be like, yeah, he wants to meet you at the soccer team meetup place, and like she goes there and it's empty, and she's like kicking the soccer ball, so she's mad. And the boxes turned out to be just like her winnings from winning like the beauty pageant. But it's cute. The whole like hand holding scene is really, really adorable, and they're so shy. I think one of the best scenes in this entire anime is the scene with them talking after the like shrine thing.
Yeah.
Legitimately, that one was so hard to watch, but so beautifully done. Because he's really trying to open up to her, and then she doesn't understand what to do, which is really common.
Yeah.
Like if you're opening up to somebody about like somebody in your family committing suicide and your feelings about that and like your regrets, a lot of people don't know how to react to that, and that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't. She's like, I have all these instructions in the letter, but I still don't know what to say to him. And he gets upset and he leaves early because, she isn't able to like make him feel better. And I mean, that's a normal reaction on both of their parts
Right, yeah.
because there are always people who you say something about like how you're feeling and they're like, I don't know how to react to this, like I really don't. And a lot of it is extremely difficult to talk about and to actually like figure out a way to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
But on his end as well, it's really hard to open up because you know that they don't understand.
Right.
So he knows like what he's feeling, what he's going through, his regrets, but he's not able to verbalize it in a way that she can actually comprehend it and like sympathize with him in a way that he needs.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. It's
Yeah.
really, really hard. And it ends up with him like sitting on the opposite bench of her because he's like, I just need to be by myself for a bit. And then he skedaddles when people show up. And so she feels like, she let him down and is freaking out, which is what leads to the really great reveal at the end of this episode. I was not expecting that, but she realizes at that point she can't do it by herself because she doesn't know what to say to him and she doesn't know how to make it better. And really, it's not necessarily a sense of like, I can make it better, but like, how do you form a support system for him?
Right.
And then when Sua comes up and it's like, so about that letter, I got one too. Then you realize like, okay, they can work together. They can create a support system. So you feel a bit more hopeful at this point. Like I feel like it's a turning point in the series and that like you understand more of how Kakeru's feeling. But at the same time, you see that like they're going to try and build a way to make him feel like he doesn't have to do what he does.
Right.
Also, his grandma is a really fantastic character. Like she's a very minor character, but she the scenes with her are always intriguing to watch because of the way that she talks about things.
Right.
And this is one of them. She's like, it wasn't an accident what happened. Like he purposefully rode his bicycle in front of that truck. And, this is the letter that I got with him explaining it. And like she's very stoic about it. And I'm assuming that this is his mom's mom because his dad hasn't been in the picture since he was in kindergarten.
Right. I would assume so as well.
So it's kind of a double whammy for this lady because she's had her daughter commit suicide and then like half a year later she has her grandson commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still at the sense where she's like talking to his friend group and saying, he really cared about you guys a lot and he talked about you and I appreciate what you did and it's God so good. Again, she's a very minor character, but I love the interactions with her.
Right. But yeah, now we got the reveal that like, hey, Naho's not the only one with a future letter, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways we could see where that goes. But let's continue on with episode number 7. Now Naho learns from Sua that he also got a letter from his future self. They teamed up to plan to save Kakeru from his impending suicide. They also learn about Kakeru's upcoming birthday, and the gang decides to ask him what he wants for his birthday. When Naho notices Kakeru doesn't have a sports bag, she decides to buy one for him. Again, Ueda corners Naho, and telling her to give up, but Takako interferes and reveals that Ueda is a bully. Big reveal, clearly.
Woo!
Meanwhile, Sua and Kakeru have a conversation regarding the latter's birthday. Shifting timelines, the present-day gang visits Kakeru's desk and places her gifts, but a bouquet of flowers was handed to Naho by Sua, telling that Kakeru intends to give flowers to Naho. As they celebrate Kakeru's birthday and handed their respective gifts, Sua gives Kakeru a bunch of flowers and whispered to Kakeru that he should give it to Naho. As Naho and Sua's letters progress, they learn that Kakeru will visit his friends in Tokyo and reveal his intention of committing suicide. Naho becomes worried, but Sua had a plan, so they confronted Kakeru, who is acting a bit weird. It reveals that Kakeru wants to die due to his regret of not accompanying his ill mother after the first day of school. It also reveals that Kakeru lambasted his mother on a text message while enjoying Naho's company, despite Naho wanting to confess that her invitation is the reason why Kakeru joined them. Suwa joins the confrontation and hugs Kakeru, telling him to live and move on. Naho reveals her feelings to Kakeru that she is in love with him. Learning from Naho's feelings, Kakeru decides to move on and forget about suicide.
Oh, this episode was really good. So one thing that I thought was really cute is that they were like pestering him about like his birthday gifts. He's like, I don't know this. I don't know. And this is at one point where we see Naho actually like standing up for herself in a way, because she's talking to Kakeru and asks him like, you know, what do you need? And she realizes that he doesn't have a sports bag, and you get like a little bit of a flashback that his mom had thrown out his sports bag and his cleats when they moved, and we find out a little bit more about that in a later episode. But so she's like, all right, I'll get you a sports bag, and he's like, no, it's too expensive. And then he leaves, and she's walking out, and Ueda's like, oh, you know, thanks for the information. That's what I'm going to get him for his birthday. And she's like, fine, he'll get 2. Like, good, Naho. Good job. Like, she's still cowering, and she's still scared of Ueda, but at the same time, she's like, I'm not backing down on this. That's what he's getting. If you get him 1 too, fine, he'll have 2 bags. So, like, I was really, really proud of her at that point. And the scene with the flowers was also funny because Suwa gives him the bouquet of flowers, and I think it who was it that said it? I think it was Hagita. He's like, "What are you, his boyfriend?" It's really cute. The scene in the like with the cleaning where they confront him. Oof.
It's rough.
It's real rough.
Yeah.
It's really, really rough. Because basically Sua's like, talk to us. You're shutting everybody out. There's something going on. Tell us what's happening. And then like Suwa at one point gets him in like the most intense hug, and I'm just like, oh man, boy showing emotion is great. But it hurts, that entire thing, because he's like telling them straight out, like, this is how I feel, this is my issue, and like you can see on his face how terrible he feels about everything. And like he says at this point that he's not willing to commit suicide anymore and like to change, but he doesn't actually go through with that change yet. You can tell that he's like saying that, but it's not actually how he feels.
Yeah.
Which becomes like a point of tension throughout like the rest of the episodes, is that like they know what's going on in his head, and he's actually explicitly said what's going on in his head, but they don't know how to combat it. And I don't know. No, it's in a later episode, so I'm not going to talk about it yet. But yeah, and he's freaking Tokyo friends. God. I don't know, man. This entire cleaning scene wrecked me.
It's a big bundle of emotions for you. Wrapped up in a hug.
It is. All right, I'm going to get through this without crying. I cried a lot during watching this.
No surprise there.
Like a lot. But I'm not going to cry during the podcast. Promise.
We'll see.
Okay, maybe. We'll see.
Episode number 8. Kakeru cancels his plans with his friends from Tokyo, telling Naho that Suwa is more fun to hang out with anyways. Naho begins to feel that she can change what happened in the past, as a Tokyo visit was when he was supposed to express his intent to suicide. However, on the same day that he first attempted suicide in his previous life, Naho instead experiences a dizzy spell on the soccer pitch. After Kakeru is picked up by his grandmother, Suwa meets up with Naho and apologizes for not giving them a supportive push, despite his future self suggesting that he should. Naho returns home and begins reading further into her present-day timeline and learns that Kakeru is going to be uneasy about being picked to anchor the relay team for the class races. Along with Suwa, they make sure not to force him to run in the race initially, and he concedes that he is in fact nervous that he might fall and lose the race for the team. Prior to alerting his class about his decision, Azusa and Takako pressure Suwa into talking to them, feeling that he is hiding something from them. The entire group of friends each elect to volunteer for roles in the race, and Kakeru decides that he will run the race with his friends. After school, Suwa and Naho discuss their decision to go against the letter suggested path, and Naho builds the resolve to put her letter away and go off what she feels Kakeru wants in her heart more than what her future self seems to think. The next day, Hagita asks Azusa to hang out with him after school. Kakeru also asks Naho to walk to the school gates with him. In the locker room, however, she trips and falls into Kakeru's arms and is too embarrassed or unsure to accept his efforts to hold her hand. The same issue repeats the next day, and in both cases, Kakeru excuses himself. Naho is confronted by everyone else in the group, and Azusa and Takako both reveal their letters. Furthermore, they suggest that Kakeru maybe not have anything wrong with him other than the rejections felt from not getting to hold Naho's hand. Hagita is pushed into also revealing his letter by Azusa, confirming that everyone else has received letters from the future. Together, they strengthen their resolve to save their friend.
Which further solidifies the support group. This episode has a lot in it. Like, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of where to start on this. We'll talk more about his first attempt at suicide later in one of the episodes, so I'm not going to really talk about that right now.
Okay.
Because I think it's like episode 11 or 12, something like that. I think it's 12 that they go into that further, so I want to talk about it there. The scene where they're all like standing up and volunteering to do the race was super cute. It was amazing. Everybody's like, "We'll do it, I'll do it," and then like lastly, Hagita's sitting there and like, I'm not good at running. They're like, "You better get up right now.
Get up.
You better
Stand
do
up.
it." He's like, "All right,
fine."
And I think it was this episode where you actually see that him and Azwa like are training together, and it's so freaking cute.
Mm-hmm.
Because it turns out that he's like the slowest kid in their class.
Yeah.
Like slower than anybody else, and so he's like, "All right, I got to do this. Let's get better." And so they train together, and it's super cute. And I think this is also a part where it becomes like really clear that he has a crush on her.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's like, "You could have asked anybody to help you train because it's also slow, but you picked me. Why would you do that?" What else happened that I should talk about? The hand-holding.
Hand-holding.
This was the part where I didn't understand how Naho didn't understand what was going on.
Especially this far in.
Yeah, because he keeps like putting his hand. She's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Oh my God, Naho.
Please.
Why do you think he's putting his hand out? Is he asking for money? Like, what do you think he's doing?"
You got a couple bucks to spare.
And she's like, "I don't understand." And then he like runs away upset. I'm like, "Girl, really? You can't figure this out on your own?" He keeps putting his hand out. I wonder what he could possibly want. I just wanted her to like put something weird in his hand, like, here's a lunchbox.
Here's an eraser.
Yeah, here's an eraser. And you can see how much it affects him throughout this episode. Like, he gets really, really upset that she won't hold his hand because he feels like he's done something wrong.
Right.
And
she's just being dumb, like,
she's like, "I don't understand what you want from me." And he's like, "What am I doing that she's not understanding my intentions?" Because like up until this point, they've been steadily building to like a relationship. Although, he had even said during the part where he passed out that they were not dating.
Right.
Because he passed out, and I think it was Azua who's like, "Your girlfriend was really worried about it." And it's like, "My girlfriend? I don't have a girlfriend. Who are you talking about?" And he says, like, "I don't want to date anybody because I feel like I'll hurt them." And But then, like, something as simple as, like, I want to hold your hand. And then she's like, I don't understand. It's wrecking him. And it feels terrible. And finally, everybody's like, Naho, you're an idiot. How did you not realize he just wanted to hold your hand? How is this hard? And that they basically said everything that I was trying to say to her. And they're like, girl, no, just hold the man's hand. That's all you got to do. It's okay. But yeah, she did fall like face first into his chest at one point, which was pretty funny. And he says at one point, like, I don't think it was this episode, but in a later episode, he's like, I didn't mind that really. Because she's like, I'm so sorry, I fell into you. And he's like, nope, it was good. I'm fine with it. You touched my chest. This is cool. It's cute. They're adorable. Even though she's an idiot. I just don't understand. How do you not understand he's trying to hold your hand?
It's very hard, clearly.
But also finding out that everybody has letters and that they're all on board to try and save him is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Because it becomes more than a shoujo at this point. Like, it's not about the relationship between Naho and Kakeru. It's about the entire dynamic of the group. And I love that.
Yeah.
Like, it's shoujo, but it's also this.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. All about it.
Well, now we have 5 episodes left.
Ooh.
So let's talk about number 9. Everyone except for Kakeru continue to discuss their support for Naho, saying the only way they feel that Kakeru will truly be happy is if he is with her. Naho begins making a more conscious effort to do what she feels she needs to do to improve upon the relationship. After school, the group meets up to discuss their efforts to make it all work out, but when Kakeru asks, they cover it up and suggest they are deciding on the race order. Asaza begins to look into her letter from her present-day self and discovers that her birthday will fall on a rainy day. The umbrella she receives as a gift from Hagita she lends to Kakeru when she asks Naho to let him walk under hers. And her present-day self wonders what would have happened if she hadn't. Despite the sunny forecast, everyone but Kakeru now feature an umbrella, unlike Azasa's present recollection of just Naho and Azasa having one. In the end, Naho and Kakeru use Naho's umbrella and walk home, and eventually leads to holding one another's hands. Kakeru gets closer to Naho, but when he suggests that he would like to be able to go out with her on a date, that he will wait for her to want to do so. Naho is unable to say this yet. The scene shifts 9 days forward to the day of the athletic meet, where Naho reads her letter from her future self once more. She learns that Kakeru is unable to tell the rest of the group about his mother. Suwa decides to ask his parents to invite Kakeru's grandmother along to the meet and offer her a ride, which improves Kakeru's spirits at the time. During the group photo, however, he begins to think about his mother again and still seems to be troubled by his past. The group minus Kakeru gets together again, where Azasa wonders how those he hasn't told yet should help him if he doesn't want to tell them. Suwa tries to get Kakeru fired up by suggesting he might start asking her out. Kakeru responds that he would be okay with that and cites that moving away might be a reality and he wouldn't want to hurt Naho. The closing scene has Kakeru doubting himself and how he responded verbally to Suwa when his actions show otherwise.
Again, there's a lot in this episode. The umbrella part was adorable because at one point he's like, why do you all have umbrellas? It called for sun. And they're like, no, it said it was going to rain. It said it was going to rain. And he's, no, can I use the umbrella you just got as a gift? No, it's a gift. It's mine. Like, they're all so freaking obvious. It's hilarious. But it's cute because he finally gets the handhold that he's been asking for ages here. And that was great. And that's another fun shoujo trope of walking under the umbrella together. And then they get wet at some point, but I can't remember why.
Rain.
Well, yeah, but like for some reason, like they get out from under the umbrella. I think like, oh, I remember what it was. He like brushes up against her and she like jumps back and she's like startled by it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he feels like, oh, she's gonna reject me again. She's like, sorry, I was just startled. It's okay. And then like they're all wet and then they hold hands. So that's a point where he actually doesn't get rejected because Naho finally figures out like, maybe he just wants to, be closer with me. Wow. Amazing. Um, hmm.
Hmm.
I'm trying. So then I guess the athletic festival is what we should be talking about.
Right. At least like part of it. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Um, God, I can't get over the umbrella. It's so funny. Okay, so the athletic meet is interesting. Um,
Because I don't think they
like I
do any
said,
of the events in this episode.
they don't. This is all the build up,
Yeah.
and like
The
one of
next
the
episode is the
things
events.
that again is really well done in this is his grandmother being there. Because she didn't really know about it nor have a way to get there, and so they make sure that she's there.
Hmm.
And at first it makes him happy because he's like, oh, there's somebody here to support me. And like in the original timeline,
There was no
everybody
one.
else, there was nobody there. Um, and that's also a really like big red flag of depression is like he's not telling anybody about big events in his life. Like he's not telling his grandma about this athletic meet, even though she's obviously willing to show up. But he just didn't want to bother with it. But he's still really, really struggling because he keeps thinking of like a kindergarten, first grade, something like that meet where his mom came and was taking pictures and was so proud of him. And so he's happy that his grandma's there, but he's upset that his mom is not.
Right.
And they do have a conversation of like, okay, so we all know about what's going on. We all know about his mom, even though he's telling all of us that his mom had to work that day, and so that's why she couldn't show up. So like, what do we do? Um, I think one of the most hard-hitting parts of this is Sua saying that he's going to ask out Naho, and Kaku's like, that would be fine. I think that's actually better. Like, ooh. That's another big red flag, buddy. Really, really, really big red flag.
Big old red flags.
Yeah, and I mean he does that fake smile again here, and again nobody's picking it up.
Hmm.
Nobody's realizing that's what's going on, but that's not how he feels, and it's obvious that's not how he feels. But he's pushing that to happen. Ugh. It's a lot here that hurts. A lot of it hurts.
Oh, yeah. Well, you want to move on to episode 10?
Yeah, let's talk about
Right.
the athletic meet thingy.
Kakuru's friends notice something is amiss because of the way he's acting. Hagita's future self noticed that Kakuru had injured himself during the pole toppling game. Hagita, Azusa, Suwa, and Takako eventually catch up to Naho and Kakuru, whom were sent on an errand by a teacher. They confront Kakuru about why he is down during the meet when they had hoped it would be a happier time for him, hoping that he might open up to them about some of what is bothering him. Kakuru eventually caves about his mother being gone and how he is unsure if he should be having fun together without her. Together, they help Kakuru realize that there are people that care for him all around him, and that it's okay to be true to his own feelings, good or bad. Kakuru gets his ankle treated while the rest of the group finish the errand, and all six compete in the race. After the race, Kakuru's grandmother talks about how he wasn't smiling much, and she divorced his father as a kid. Or after she divorced his father as a kid. Until he managed to finish first at the final race of the meet. His grandmother said that she was so happy when he finally smiled back then, and that she was probably happy right now that he was able to smile again. Guessing they're talking about his mom.
His mom, yeah.
It's very badly worded.
It is.
Meanwhile, Naho thinks about the letter and how they have diverted from both the mistake and the suggested alternative that her future self suggested. Naho and Kakuru meet at the conclusion of the race, where Kakuru manages to take a reward he was promised for winning the race.
So one part of this that is hilarious is the pole toppling game, like all the boys take off their shirts. And Naho is like all about some Kakuru shirtlessness, and like everybody else is losing their mind about Suwa because he's like ripped. And Hagita has drawn on abs in purple marker.
I forgot about that.
It's so funny. He's like standing there, and they do like the anime trope where his glasses are like, you can't see his eyes. He's like standing with his hands on his hips with his drawn on abs. It's so good. And the whole thing with the ankle is they're treating Sua for an injury he got, and then Naho was saying, oh, you also got injured. Can I treat you? And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. And part of this is that he's jealous of Sua and how he looks, like his physical appearance. Mm-hmm. And he even says at some point, like, I can't remember if it's this episode or a later episode, where he's like, I don't have that body. And so, like, some body issues there, which,
right.
Yeah, I get. And then you have the mat carrying, which for some reason a teacher is like, hey, Naho and Kakeru, it'd be a good idea for both of you to carry this really heavy mat by yourselves. Like, no, dumb teacher. But they're both struggling and having a hard time, and like, wow, symbolism, this is really important. And then everybody else shows up and is like, with the 6 of us together, we can carry this really easily. Wow, I wonder what that's supposed to mean. And they, like you said, they're able to like get him to open up about like how he feels like he's not supposed to have fun because his mom's not there, and they're like, your mom would want you to have fun. Your mom would want you to smile. And he decides, okay, I'm going to stop being an angsty butt and go get my ankle treated so that we can do this. And they mentioned in the letter several times across the letters that he had tripped during the race originally, and then he felt it was his fault that his team lost.
Right.
And so, like, initially they had told him not to do it, and then they did the whole, like, group decision of doing it. And then it's super cute how they do the relay race, because they're all running, and there's a situation where each time they pass a baton, they like pass a message to Kakeru.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I think it's Naho who gives it to him and is like, you need to be happy, and you need to see us in 10 years and stuff like that. And eventually he's like, 10 years, what? That's really specific. But basically, like, they're all saying, we're here for you. And the big message of it, they say every time, is don't lose.
Yeah.
And like, obviously they're talking about something that's not this race. He doesn't know that, but every single message starts with don't lose. But yeah, we do get some backstory about like how this is where we find out that his parents divorced when he was a kid, and that he was happy during like an athletic festival when he was a kid and big smiley things and with his mom, and then after that he wasn't as happy anymore, and that he thinks that, or his grandma thinks that his mom would have been happy to see him smiling. And the whole like reward bit was that Azusa was like, I know what it should be. If we pass people or we win, like, there should be a kiss. And because Hagito was saying, like, since he's slow, if he passes one person, that like he wanted a reward. And he actually did pass a person, but then they made fun of him because it was a girl. But he tried so hard. I was really proud of him.
He did.
And Kakeru's reward was supposed to be if he wins, he could get a kiss from Naho. And so they're like talking alone together. At one point, he kisses her on the cheek, and he was like, I had to get my reward. And she like loses her brain at that point. It was really cute. Although it was really oddly animated, because to me it wasn't clear that he kissed her on the cheek. It looked like he kissed her like on the hair. And I was like,
Jump. Go,
yeah,
give me
like
some of that hair.
like why you can animate him kissing her actual cheek because she holds her cheek afterwards, and I'm like, oh, I guess he kissed her cheek. But the way that they animate it, he's like kissing around like her ear area and her hair, and I'm like, what? So that kind of dampened the moment for me a little bit that they didn't actually animate like a real cheek kiss, and I was
Right.
like, is he sniffing her? Like, what is he doing? Um, but yeah, big old symbolism with that heavy mat, man.
Big old Matt.
Yeah, I mean, the two of them were struggling to carry it, and they were like falling and taking breaks and yelling about the ankle, and then finally everybody's like, "Yo, we're helping. Go get
Yo.
your ankle checked out."
Yo.
Bye.
Yo.
And they get group pictures taken, which is really cute.
Well, do you want to talk about some angst? Some hurt?
Have we not already been talking about some angst and some hurt?
True. Well, how about some more?
All right,
Sprinkled
let's do it.
on top. Episode 11. The group each takes one The group each takes one photo that was taken by Sua's father.
They eat the photo.
They eat the photo. The story shifts to the future group where Sua hopes that Kakeru is okay with him stealing his girl.
Oh my god! Mr. Steal girl.
They begin to each question what they could have done differently, but it hits Sua the hardest as he was the only one who really knew how both sides felt. Naho comments about how she still would have married him, citing how happy she was when she got his confession in high school. The day of the confession was New Year's Eve. Shifting back to the present, Sua suggested they spend New Year's Eve as a group, but Sua doesn't want to go. Takako then alerts him to what she receives from her future self and asks him if he really wants to let go of his chance to be with Naho so easily. The episode shifts back to the class to a class discussion about parallel worlds, which explains a lot about how the future will stay the same regardless of their decisions. He will still always marry Naho in that world, but in this world, he wants to make a choice to support Kakeru and Naho. Kakeru couldn't make the Christmas day because of his grandma being sick. The feature letter wanted Kakeru to stay with her on New Year's, despite his grandmother's condition, and he refused to do so. She tries to get him to stay because they meet his grandmother in the letter too, meaning she lives through in that future. This leads to Naho making the same mistake, and the fight happens again. After encouragement from the group, Sua meets up with Naho and says he will support them no matter what, but remains firm to not confess his love for Naho.
So one part of this that's super cute is that the photo selection part, because they're all like trying to figure out what kind of picture they're gonna take, and Naho takes a picture of Kakeru like smiling really big, and it's a genuine smile. You can see it at that point. He's smiling really big at her, and he's like, "You're barely in this picture. Like, you can see the back of your head, and that's it. Why do you want that picture?" And she's like, "I just want it, okay?" And he's like,
Give me the
"Fine.
picture.
Then I'm going to take this one of you as a cheerleader." And she's like, "Oh, this is my favorite." It was cute. Especially because in the last episode when they were all dressed as cheerleaders, everyone's like, "You look like crap." So like the boys were being like super tsundere about the cheerleader stuff. So when he chooses this, it's like, yay. Also, I'm laughing at the wording of stealing his girl.
It's real good.
Oh man. Yeah, this entire episode's basically Sua trying to figure out like what to do, because he does care about her and he knows how both of them feel, and he feels somewhat responsible because this is where like the turning point happened. Yeah, that was an interesting part with her sitting in the back of the car and it's like, "I would have married you anyway." And he's like, "I don't know about that."
Let's be real, come on.
So he's trying really hard to get out of going to the festival, and he's like, "Yeah, I got stuff to do. I got things to do." And they call him like, "What are you doing?" "Watching TV." But he's like, "Out." Yeah, you're watching TV, buddy. Totally. They do the whole like, let's go get our luck drawing things. There you go, those things. And I think like Naho and Kakeru both get like slight luck. Um, the fight was intense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, this is a lot of the same thing that happened at that other festival where she's like trying to understand what he's going through and can't. And this is something that I think is really important because he gets frustrated at this point that she can't understand. But like that, it's understandable on both sides. Like, I understand that she doesn't understand it, but I also understand that he wants somebody to understand him. Her wording is not good, and she knows that. She could have phrased it in a better way.
Right.
And because she's basically like, it's all gonna be okay. And like, that's usually not the best thing to say to somebody who's going through this kind of struggle. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
And so like she goes to reach for him and he even like slaps her hand away and like runs away from her. And we find out that this is like the last interaction that she had with him in the original timeline, that like she never got to apologize for the fight or anything before he committed suicide on February 15th. But like she had tried so hard trying to figure out like, what do I do different to make this fight not happen, and then it happened in the exact same way. And this is like the pivotal moment of Sua where he realizes like he has to go to her, he has to make her feel better, but at the same time he cannot confess to her. He has to say like, go get him, go find him.
Right.
And at one point, she actually tries to call Kakeru to like apologize, and he throws his phone on the ground and shatters it, because he just doesn't want to deal with it. Which, like, I've had those moments. I haven't shattered my phone because I love it too much, but like, I've had those moments where I will just legitimately put my phone away, and like, I have to be away from people at the moment.
Right. Yeah.
I get that. I get that.
Totally fair.
So it was. At this point, like, I started to worry that like maybe they weren't going to be successful, because he's still not able to like relate to them in a way. And I mean, it's hard when you have a dead parent and other people don't, like, they don't understand.
Right.
Because like you can feel like you can love your parents and you can understand like, okay, you know, it sucked to have them gone, but until you actually have a dead parent, you don't know how it feels. And especially in his instance where he feels like it was a completely avoidable death. So like, Naho was trying to be very, very positive and optimistic, and that's not what he needed at that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not her fault. It's not, because it's difficult to handle a situation like this, especially when somebody's like intensely emotional, and he's also afraid that like the only person he has left is going to die.
It's incredibly complicated.
Yeah. Because his grandma's literally the only family he has left, and she got sick to the point that she had pneumonia, and like old people with pneumonia is scary.
It's very serious.
And so he's like, you know, I feel like if she dies, I'm alone. And she's like, no, you're not alone. He's like, no, you don't get it. I cried so much during this episode. I cried so, like, my eyes are watering at the moment thinking about this episode, because I legitimately thought they would not succeed at this point.
Right.
I thought at this point that like no matter what they did, there was like, it was inevitable.
Like there's no changing that
feeling.
But no, not that feeling, but like, I guess his decision. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
There's no changing his decision. That's what you were thinking.
Right. That's what I thought. Was that at this point I was thinking like, oh God, no matter what they do, like he's still gonna go through with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. Speaking of tough episodes, crap.
Let's talk about the penultimate episode, Letter 12. Gonna get some backstory and all that jazz.
Yeah, literally, this is basically just like Kakeru's side of everything, of
Mhm.
like the original timeline.
The episode begins with the story of Kakeru moving to the area and covers the day of his mother's suicide and some of the events that led to his eventual suicide in the future timeline. While most of the details are hashed out in notes from the future, the end of the flashback of the future timeline shows when Kakeru found his mother's phone and the unsent message that he never received from her. He learns things that he didn't know about her situation, including her father's violent past that led to the divorce that he blamed his mother for. It allows him to gain resolve that needed to commit suicide to be with his mother again. After a brief visit to Naho's future timeline, the story resumes in the present. Naho read in the letter that she never was able to talk the same way with Kakeru again, and she makes a point to apologize to him for what happened on New Year's, which her future self was never able to accomplish. While she does accomplish this goal, there is still a rift between the two that she can't seem to get through. The future selves of the 5 group members meet at the designated spot where they lament inviting Kakeru to go with them on that day. They discuss that a researcher believes that there is a black hole in the same location as the Bermuda Triangle, and they decide to send letters out to sea in hopes of reaching their past selves. The episode concludes with Naho telling Kakeru to wait until Valentine's Day. Her thoughts suggest that she remains committed to seeing him through his troubles, regardless of whether or not he likes her or hates her.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack in this episode. Because we see his side of a lot of events, and one of them being the day that they invite him out. And you see that he's trying really hard to make friends, and he's excited about the opportunity to make friends. He was supposed to go to the hospital with his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And he sends a text message to her, and this is partially why he feels responsible. He sends this text message to her that basically says, like, I'm with friends, I'm not coming, you're an adult, you can go. And I mean, he's a kid.
Yeah.
And like, kids say dumb stuff, and they even say at one point, like, kids always feel like their mom is nagging them or being like ridiculous or whatever. And like, in this instance, he had no way of knowing
Right.
that like that kind of message would come across as wrong and be the last thing that he said to her. But we see, you know, that affected him a lot, understandably. We also see the meeting with the friends in Tokyo, which this part was really difficult for me, because he's sitting there with his group of friends and they're all talking, and he mentions, I mean, he almost blatantly says, like, I want to commit suicide. Like, he says, I want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's talking over him and not paying attention, and basically like strengthens his resolve in it, because nobody actually cares to stop him or to say like, you shouldn't do it. They just ignore him. And it was so hard. It was so hard to watch this kid. Like, he wanted somebody to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't. They kept talking about stupid that they want to talk about, because they're 16 years old, and that's what you do. Like, you never really have to deal with your friends saying like, you know, I want to die. It's tough. And then the phone thing was intense.
Yeah. Just a little.
So he asked his grandma where his mom's pictures were, because he wanted to go through them. And so he finds his mom's phone, he puts it on the charger and opens it up, and he sees that like the last received message that she had from him was the message that he had sent, and like already felt like. And then like he goes through the unsent message, like the drafts on her phone, and sees her explaining everything, and like how his dad was extremely abusive and that she didn't want to subject him to that, and that she was sorry. And basically he realized that like he's been having these negative feelings towards his mom his entire life, and there was no reason for it. And so it kind of strengthens his want to be with his mom again, because he feels like he's wronged her in many ways.
It furthers his resolve that like he's responsible for it.
Yeah. And we see a lot of what's going on with Kakeru and Naho, because she apologizes. He's like, "Oh, it's fine, whatever." And then after that, she keeps saying, "Let's hang out or let's do this." And he's like, "Oh, no, I got this other thing to do." Or like she'll say hi, good morning, whatever, and then like he'll go and find another friend to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And like she doesn't understand how to get through to him, which again, this was really after the episode that we just got off, I was like, "Oh God, no." Because he's distancing himself purposefully.
Right.
Um, he's not talking to anybody. He's shut himself down, and like he knows what he needs to do in his mind. He doesn't actually need to do this. Um, and we do find out that there was like a confusion on Valentine's Day, that like there was she had a box of chocolates that she was going to give, and he asked her like a few times who she was going to give it to, and she told him that she couldn't say. And then finally he left school and was like, good luck giving it to whoever you're going to give it to, thinking that she was giving it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Which again is like the last straw for him.
That is we're getting a little bit ahead.
Sorry.
You're fine. Just making.
They talk about it a little bit on here.
Like, are we talking about like the original timeline version?
Yeah, the original timeline.
Okay.
In the original timeline,
my bad.
She's not able to give it to him, and so that strengthens his resolve to go through with it on the 15th. Because basically, like he had pushed everybody away, and then he felt that Naho had given up on him and was giving the chocolate to somebody else. Then on the 15th, he finds the phone, and he's like, "All right, there's nothing left for me."
Right.
So that's the original timeline.
Okay, yeah.
And again, you get the like crazy Bermuda Triangle stuff of like, there's a black hole, and black holes are what people think can do time travel. So if we can get the letters to the Bermuda Triangle and address them to our future self with postage and have them delivered on this day, then everything will be fine.
So nonsensical.
It's hilarious. So that was a good little break between all the super emotions of this this part. Then like, so what if we got the letters to the Bermuda Triangle? How do we get to the Bermuda Triangle? How do we do this? And it's like, oh my God, guys, you're hilarious. Which then leads us to the last one.
The finale.
Yep.
It's called Last Letter. Because the
Wonder
last
what
ladder.
happened. Ladder.
Boy, there's a lot to this. We're gonna be talking a lot.
Whoops.
Leading up to Kakeru's final day, Naho struggles with being able to deliver her chocolate to Kakeru. The future letter outlines the 4 different chances that she will have, but the first 3 times she missed her opportunity. Her last chance she has, Kakeru leaves earlier than anticipated, and she hurries to catch up. On the way there, she collides with OVA and drops the chocolate and gets stepped on. This does not change her resolve to chase after Kakeru. She meets him in the locker room where he attempts to decline receiving the chocolate. She confronts him about avoiding her, and he suggests that he felt like he heard her on New Year's Day. She delivers the message sent by text in the future, "I'm not hurt." Furthermore, she expresses her commitment to Kakeru regardless of fights that occur and apologizes again to Kakeru. He admits that he was trying to distance himself because he didn't want to hurt her anymore. He admits every time she wanted to be with him it made him happy and that he struggled to keep his distance. She finally expresses her desire to go out with him on a date and reminds him that if she asked him if he would go out on a date, he'd do it. Despite his attempts to avoid Naho in the date, she eventually gets her point across that she is okay with all his faults and embraces him in a hug. After a brief scene, he requests the chocolate that Naho had behind her back still, and the rest of the group onlooking cheers them on in much the same way they stood up for Ueda early on. Kakeru's last day in the future timeline finally occurs. Each member of the group gives Kakeru gifts in an attempt to lift his spirit as high as possible. Naho provides him a lunch for the first time since the Ueda issue months earlier. Kakeru even turns down the walk home, suggesting he's going to the hospital with his grandma. This was something he had refused the opportunity to do in the future timeline. Small changes occur throughout the episode that differ from the letters, but the group is still worried about 8 p.m. that night. The future group talks about the paradox that would occur if the timelines were connected, and further convince themselves that they have said goodbye to Kakeru for the final time in their own time. But they are satisfied with sending the letters, knowing that if there are parallel timelines, that they save him. That is more than worth it to them to try it. The present timeline returns, and Kakeru looks at his mother's phone in the current timeline, just like future timeline. This was the event that pushed him to commit suicide previously. While he lasts beyond the 8 p.m. timeline that the event occurred in the past, he makes the same effort to take his own life again, walking in front of an oncoming truck. However, this time he couldn't bring himself to do it and got out of the way at the last minute, citing that friendship made him reconsider. Specifically, the friends he had made had led him to consider their feelings as well. The group all shows him the letters that they received from the future and suggest they had attempted to make amends for previous mistakes. They also provide letters from their future for him to read. In the end, Stuart tells him it's his fault for trying to die and that he won't forgive him if he does, and then apologizes for him for inviting him to join them during the opening ceremony. All the friends embrace. Afterwards, they walk back and learn that someone vandalized his bike, Hagita, which is why he walked instead and was late. He writes a letter to his future self for the capsule that differs from the future timeline and occurs on a day beyond when he otherwise would be living in the future timeline. The group takes the time to put together a time capsule in much the same way they had in the future timeline. This breaks the chain of events in the future world, suggests that they will ensure it never happens, as they will always be there for Kakeru.
Yep, there's a lot here.
A lot.
Yeah. So, again, in last episode, we were talking about how the chocolate was like one of his last breaking points.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's determined. She's going to give him this dang chocolate. And so she's following the different choices and fails each time. The one way the Ueda is interesting because Ueda's like, who are you going to give that to? You can't give it to anybody now. It's ruined. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. Even though, like, at one point she's like, don't go anywhere because I'm going to give you chocolate, but I can't give you chocolate now. And, like, he realizes that she's holding it behind her back. Like,
right.
He's not dumb. But this is the part where I was talking about where he says that he didn't hate her, like, falling into him. And I think she even says, like, this is where she thought that he looked, like, really good at the sports festival. Because everybody kept telling her, like, if you think he looks hot, you should tell him that he looks hot. And so, like, they're kind of letting things come out better in the sense that he's like, you know, I kind of liked you having your hands on my chest. And she's like, I kind of liked you being shirtless. It was pretty rad. So they talk more and, you know, she clarifies that, like, he didn't hurt her, that, you know, they hurt each other. It's okay that, like, people fight. And that was important as well, so that he didn't, like, further distance himself from her. Man. Then, like, the end of the episode was freaking rough as
yeah.
There are small children outside my apartment screeching, and it's terrible. So, time travel always is shenanigans, nonsense, and
Weird.
it's hard to do narratively, but I feel like they did okay here. Because everything's the same, and he sees the phone and he decides that he's going to do it. Hilarious that Hagita vandalizes the bike. Because he even mentions at one point, they're like, okay, so what do we need to do? And he's like, well, if he does it on the bike, then he just can't have the bike. And they're like, Hagita, that's a dumb idea.
He's like, whatever, it's a great idea. I'm going to do it anyways.
So he does it. And, like, later on in the episode, they ask, he's like, so why did you not take your bike? And he's like, oh, man, it looked like, you know, got wrecked. It wasn't really working. And everybody looks at Hagita and he does, like, his glasses glaze over again. It's so funny. But yeah, he did the same thing. He walked in front of the truck, but then he decided that he couldn't do it. And he decided that he understood that they would be upset if he committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, he's thinking beyond just, like, his own grief, and he's thinking, like, how would other people feel?
Right.
And that's important as somebody who you know, struggles with depression and has struggled with, like, suicidal thoughts and that kind of thing. You have to always think, like, what would other people think about this?
Right.
Because that's what's going to keep you alive, period. It's not going to be, like, some magical thing. And this isn't one of those situations, because you and I have talked about this before. I hate stories where it's like, being in love cures depression and cures any mental illnesses and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
No. And this isn't that. This is not that. Because it's not Naho and being in love with her that saves him.
It's everyone.
It's everybody, and it's him realizing that he actually has something to contribute to his friends, and
Mm-hmm.
he has something to, like, everybody actually cares about him. So it's more of a understanding of self-worth, rather than just like, oh wow, I'm in love with this person, now I'm saved magically, woo. And in fact, one of the things that I think is so strong about the scene is that it's not Naho at all that's doing most of the talking. It's Sua.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who's saying, we would have felt like crap if this happened. He's the one who's explaining the time travel and their regrets. He's the one who's saying, we don't want you to die. Naho doesn't say any of that. It's all Sua, and that's so important because, like, otherwise it's just going to come across as like one of those like cheap love rescues all things.
Right.
And it's not that, and I loved that. I think that was really, really important here. um and I think the fact that they all were able to give letters to him in the future to show like how much he meant to them even after he was gone, like, that's important because one thing you have to think about is that this boy tried to commit suicide, didn't go through it, and then all of his friends are like, "Yeah, by the way, here are these letters from our future selves talking about you," and he's like,
Oh,
"What?"
what?
And I'm sure there's like some kind of talk that they need to have about the fact that like these letters have been driving a lot of their decisions. Because in my opinion, like one of my first thoughts would be like, did you actually want to do these things, or were you
Right.
just doing
Yeah.
them because of the letters? Like they need to have a talk about this.
Which I mean,
Period.
like for sure, like they would be like, yeah, we wanted to do this, like even though the letters kind of dictated us getting to this point. It's like, if we didn't want to do what the letters did, we wouldn't have done what the letters did, or like it
Right.
suggested that we do.
So I feel like that's a conversation that they need to have, and most likely based on the film, they do have.
Right.
Because otherwise he's going to just think like you're only doing this because of these letters, and that's just because like that's how depression makes your mind work. Like you think the worst possible scenario every time.
Right. Like he'd basically think like, oh, you're doing this just to make yourselves feel better, not because you actually want to help me.
Not because you care,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I believe has to happen, and I, like I said, I think does happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the letters and given to him of like the future selves, and then you get the time capsule scene, and I felt like it was a really good way to end it, because like one of the last shots is actually like future Sua and Naho with their kid like at the sunset. And so like you understand that in that timeline that's still the situation. And I was so upset at this point because like, we haven't seen like him in the future, but it's because the film does that.
Yeah.
Nah.
Which the film isn't really like a big sequel or anything. It's just like, here's everything from Sua's point of view, and you're gonna get like a bunch of shots from the anime and all that sort of stuff, and then there's a little bit more like added on at the end.
Yeah, it's basically the exact same story, just like with a little bit more input from Sua, and then like an epilogue.
Right.
And the epilogue is great because I finally got what I wanted, which is to see him as an adult. Ow, I just hit myself.
Oh no.
I got real excited. And so in this one, Naho and Kakeru are married, and they have a kid. Although the one thing that freaked me out and was a little unnecessary was Sua saying that like if she were an adult or whatever, he would marry their daughter. I'm like, ooh, don't say that. Or if their son was a girl, that he would marry her, I think is what he says.
Don't do
And I'm
that.
like, yeah, you're like 26 or 27 years old, buddy, and like that is your best friend's 1-year-old kid.
Like chill.
Yeah, like maybe calm down a bit. That's unnecessary and a little gross. And by a little gross, I mean a lot of gross. But I mean, I guess like that's some of his best friends and like their kid, and It's a cute kid. It's basically like the exact same kid, but with black hair as opposed to red hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all at the same place with the sunset, and they're having a picnic at one point. And this is where you find out that Hagita is dating Azusa. I can't say her name.
Azusa.
Yeah. Because it's hilarious how they actually frame that is that they're doing like a toast,
Mm-hmm.
and she says like to Hagita's new girlfriend, and everybody's like, Azusa, 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 Azusa. Like they go to everybody's face and they each say it, and then like it shows Hagita again, and his glasses are again like glared over so that he can't answer it, and there's this entire like bickering scene that's so funny that he's like, well, we're not getting married or anything. She's like, what, you don't want to marry me? I'd marry you. And he's like, okay, fine, we'll get married then. And it's like this cute bickering scene, and everybody's so happy, and I love it. And at the end it shows them all like watching the sunset, and it's orange colored, and he's like, I always wanted to see the sunset. And because they had apparently promised at some point that they were going to go up there and look at it, and in the original timeline he never did, so that's why they did as adults. And so in this one he actually says like, I always wanted to do this, and so you get them all like happy and everything's great. I still feel bad for Suwa because like he didn't really get a happy ending here, but he actually says in I can't remember if it's in the movie. I think it is, because he's confronted by the two friends, and what's the other one's name?
Takako.
Yes. They're like, are you okay with this? Like, are you okay with losing her? And he's like, me in this timeline, the letters are coming from, he's living the life, man. He's living the dream. He's got the perfect woman. He's got like a great job, and he's got a kid, and he's great. And he's like, but I also have to make sure that Kakeru gets his perfect end too. And so, he feels better in the sense that he knows that in some kind of parallel universe that he's getting his happy ending.
Right.
Which is really self-sacrificing, man. And beautiful, it really is. And they go into it a lot more about the Bermuda Triangle and how they set up the letters, because what they do is they all write the letters, they put them in a Ziploc bag with postage and everything, and instructions to deliver them to these addresses on these dates. And they put them in a jar and then like send them out into the ocean, and eventually they do make it through the Bermuda Triangle, and then somebody picks them up over the beach. So we realize that that's how they did it. I mean, like they mention it briefly in the series, but they actually show them doing it here.
Right.
So that's really the big things that are different in the film than the actual series.
Well, there you go. There's also a live action film, but we've not watched it, so we can't really say anything about it. Other than there's a live action film.
There's a live action film. That's all we know. We don't know if it's good. We don't know if it's bad. We just know it exists.
I guess the interesting thing about it is that like it was done before the anime.
Oh, huh. So it's based off the manga?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd probably give it a shot at some point. I was a little surprised by the real life one, so maybe I'll be surprised by this one.
Yeah.
But then again, like the Death Note anime, not the Death Note anime, the Death Note live action from Japan also exists. So, sometimes it.
I mean, the main character who does Kakeru was in the live action Death Note.
Was he really?
As L.
Oh my god.
Also, this dude has been in some other things that you would know.
Really?
He was in the live action version of JoJo Diamond and Unbreakable as Josuke. And also was Hotaro in the live action Hyoka.
Oh wow. So this is just what he does now, huh?
He does the anime live actions.
Yeah. Live action anime. I think I've seen him because I follow the voice actor who did why am I blanking on the name? Your Name guy.
I don't know the voice actor name.
No, but the main character.
Uh.
See, you're blanking too.
Yep.
I want to say Taki, but that's not right, is it?
Taki?
Yeah, that's not right.
No.
No.
Anyways.
The voice act. Yeah, it is Taki.
Aha! I was right.
Can't so, his voice actor, his Japanese voice actor, I saw on the special features that he was like hot. And so I follow him a lot now. And he's in the live action of Diamond is Unbreakable as one of Josuke's friends. So I've seen a lot of that.
There you go.
Because of my thirst.
God.
I can't help it. Sometimes you just gotta appreciate pretty boys.
Gotta drink some water.
I mean, I've almost drank an entire bottle of water, so like, and that's just not because of all the thirst, but because I'm actually trying to stay hydrated.
There you go. Kids, stay hydrated.
It's important. So I really wanted to talk about this, and I actually sent you a message today that was like, please let us talk about this.
And I was like, no.
That is not what happened. One reason is, like I mentioned, it does a really good portrayal of like a depressed character.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And it doesn't like make light of any kind of suicidal things, like any tendencies, any thoughts. It doesn't do that. And I think that that's great. And it also is, it's a great anime in the sense that like this is a group of friends who are coming together to save their friend, as opposed to, like I said, a like Manic Pixie Dream Girl situation.
Right.
And that was important to me. That like once I realized that's what was gonna happen in here, I was like, all right, fully on board. Let's go. Got this. So it did a lot of important things to me, as well as just being like shoujo as heck. It was awesome. But it was like I don't want to say like, it was very deep shoujo. It wasn't done in the sense that you're going to have like sparklies and that kind of thing. It's done in the sense of like the love is here, but it's kind of secondary.
Right.
And I really like that. And I mentioned earlier that I really like the art. I know that the art has issues in like the sense that it drops off, but the style of it's really pretty. Like I liked it the way that the characters are actually drawn when they're drawn well.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned on your main line, the art does get real bad at times.
Which is unfortunate.
It is. Because like I said, it's got a great style and it's a great story, but yeah, it definitely does have issues and art quality dropping off at points. Especially around the middle, like you said.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's definitely something you should watch if you if you want to check it out. Also, the manga is like real easy to get as well because it's like, I think 2 volumes.
Yeah, and I even looked on Amazon, even though Amazon's evil. They have like the omnibus versions of it that are like, the first one's $11.98, the second one is $13.57, and then the future one is $9.20.
Yeah, so it's like that's all you need to get the entire thing.
Yep. Which when I get a job, I'm gonna get those. Get them.
Which also just like for manga in general is like usually that's not the case, but
yeah, no, I mean like that's actually extremely reasonable in terms of price and like also just reading that amount of stuff. Like it's not very long. And you get like a complete story.
Yeah, exactly.
Neato.
Neato. Well, there you go. That's orange for you.
I didn't cry. I got close.
Good job.
I guarantee when you record this, you'll know when I got close.
I heard your voice break at one point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I got real close to it.
Yeah.
I think I can at least count 3 times that I got close to it, but I made it through. I didn't cry.
You did it.
Be proud.
I'm very proud of you.
Yay.
Well, with all that being said and done, if you would like more from us, go to seasonalcheckup.com or sac.cool, where you can find past episodes of this podcast and other podcasts like Seasonal Checkup and Jared and Al Watch. And you can find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you want more from Anladium, go to anladium.com, where she has columns and reviews on her site. You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/animecheckup, where we do Twitter. And you can support our podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/SACOVA, if you'd like to give us a buck and be supportive of this fancy podcast.
Whee!
Next week, we might have something for you.
Yep. I mean, we're going to have something.
Yes. Not might, but yeah, we will have something. But we might have to talk about something real dumb.
Oh, yeah. Also, just as a PSA, that's not anything to do with next week, but talk to your friends. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody if you need it.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, we've talked about suicide a lot in this episode, and, like, if you have that kind of thought, there are people out there that can help you.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to them.
Yeah, definitely.
Just saying.
Like, talk to experts about that stuff. Definitely. Yeah. But yeah. That'll do for us. We'll see you next week.
Alrighty.